Zidane stepped onto the pitch, the 10 other guys suddenly got better.
Damn! What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another video reaction. Today's video is how the best player on the planet become invisible to scouts. From Daily Dose of Football. First of all, subscribe to this channel and like. And today we're gonna react to this gentleman, Zinedine Zidane. Let's proceed. Oh, let's go.
So, you know what upsets me? How people act like Zidane was this natural talent who had it so easy.
Damn.
You know? They act like he came out of the womb wearing a Juventus shirt when really...
Played for Juventus. I think he played for Juventus and Madrid, I'm not sure.
He was already 25 when he first stepped foot in Italy. That's 8 seasons and 265 matches. But still, if you ask most football fans, they know nothing about it. If you're lucky, you'll get the same old story about how 1 year before his move to Turin, Kenny Dalglish had asked the owner of Blackburn to sign Zidane, only for him to reply,
he played for Liverpool, I think, right?
"Why do you want to sign Zidane when we have Team Sherwood?"
Who? Who?
And that's exactly where the problem lies. As one newspaper put it, though the world has now decided that he is unanimously great, Zidane was a hard code to decipher at first, as all one-of-a-kind footballers are. Zidane was weird. Forget the untrained eye. Even the greatest talent scouts in the world could not see past what they claimed was a lanky, sluggish midfielder with no personality or grit. Even Arsene Wenger, the same man who spotted some French kids struggling in Italy and turned him into the deadliest striker the player has ever seen, even he turned down Zidane when he was back at
Ain't no way. So Arsenal could have Zidane?
Monaco.
Damn.
In fact, for a long time, there were only a few people who seemed to truly realize the potential he had.
Cut.
You see, after France won the Euro 2000, most players just went about celebrating any way they could. But Zidane, the player of the tournament, the one who had carried them to glory, he drove down to Marseille because before he even went on holiday, he wanted to hug his mom. As a member of the French staff once said, Zidane is the superstar who could be your next-door neighbor. In fact, his quiet, withdrawn, almost...
Look, I know like his jerseys have a lot of aura. You can see that.
Timid personality was one of the things that made his talent so difficult to spot. While most all-time greats seem to be these larger-than-life personalities, Zidane just wanted a hug from his mom. But that wasn't the point. What I meant to tell you was that while he was down there, he got the news that a man named Robert Centenaire was in the hospital struggling for his life, and Zidane did not even think twice. He postponed his holiday and kept him company for what were the last few days of his life.
Damn.
But why was he so important to him? Well, back when Zidane was still Yazid, because believe it or not, he didn't like his
is her here? Zidane? Damn,
first name when he was a kid. Centenaire was the first person to scout Yazid, and even if the best he could do was take him to a tiny local club, Septem de Vallon, it meant a lot to him. As he would say, he did everything for me. He'd drive me to training. He would even give me money so that I could buy food on the weekends.
Damn.
He was like a father to me. And it was even thanks to Centenaire that Yazid met maybe the only man who would have an even bigger impact on his career. Monsieur Varron.
Monsieur Varron. My fault.
Only about a year after the two met, Centenaire convinced Yazid to
I think it's Maradona, right? Napoli.
In a tournament organized by IS Khan, where schoolboys teamed up in hopes of getting scouted. But unfortunately for Yazid, he was benched. But just as it seemed, he would not even get a chance.
So this is young Zidane? Yeah, teenager Zidane, man.
To shine, the boy was playing his position,
he went to college?
broke his wrist, and was taken to the hospital. So Yazid took over his role and put down an immense performance. Only there was no one there to watch him. The scout on duty that day was the famous Monsieur Varron, and unfortunately for Yazid, he had offered to drive the injured kid to a clinic, so he never saw him. In fact, it took 2 years and 3 months for the two to cross paths again. And how did that happen?
2 years?
Monsieur Varron was in the region to watch the trial for an interleague tournament, but then the player he was supposed to watch was benched, so he wandered around the premises until he spotted none other than the father of the boy that he had driven to the hospital years
they meet up
earlier, so they got to talking while watching the kids play until one stood.
Which was Zidane? I'm not sure. I think this guy, I think,
so much to Varron that he asked, "Who is number 13? And the man told him, "That's the kid who replaced my son when you helped us. Don't you remember him? His name is Yazid." By the end of that match, even though Yazid was not even picked by the
So Yazid is a real name?
organizers
Sure.
of the trial, Monsieur Varro was convinced he had spotted the next French great. As he said, he had hands where his feet were supposed to be.
Tough!
Just imagine if they had never crossed paths again. Regardless, not authorized to bring players to the club, Monsieur Varro convinced one of the directors at Cannes to come down to watch the kid, and in Yazid's own words, "I remember that game. I wasn't too good. They played me all the way back in defense, but I wanted to impress so badly, I risked everything.
Zidane playing defense?
One time, I
What?
tried to pull off a sombrero in my own box, lost the ball, and pretty much gave a goal away. I don't know what they saw in me that day, but in the end, they still wanted me." In fact, the director who watched him that day, Jean-Claude Elino, wanted him at his club so bad that when his parents began insisting that they didn't want him living in an academy without proper parental figures around,
Damn.
he invited him to stay in the bedroom of his own son, who had just left for the military, pretty much raising him alongside his two other kids. And let me tell you, as quiet as he was, that would be no easy task because, as we all know by now, Yazid had a temper.
Those guys friends. This is the team.
If anyone ever dared
No, this was the Euros, I think. I'm not sure. I'm not even
mock
Italian,
his
bro.
family or his origins in the ghetto, Yazid would not talk back. He would hit back. And
Damn.
indeed, it wasn't long before he was sent off for punching a player, but thankfully, again, he had someone by his side. As Jean-Claude told him, "This is the curse of the gifted player. You will have to learn to ignore their words, or you will spend the rest of your life on the sidelines watching others play.
Damn.
If you need to
This
let off
video
some
full of
steam,
quotes.
just scrub the locker rooms or something. I don't know." That last part was supposed to be just a bunch of empty words, but Yazid took them literally. The next day, after everyone left, they found him there with a bucket and a mop. As one of the coaches would say, Yazid was an example. He barely spoke, he always listened, and then he acted.
Damn,
However,
okay.
Yazid was far from making it. When he got called up for the French under-17,
Oh, the French?
they even mixed up his name, addressing the latter to Zinedine Zidane. That's how
Zinedine.
irrelevant he was back then. In fact, it would have probably have taken him ages before he made it to the first team, had it not been for Monsieur Varro yet again. As the senior team manager would tell the story, one day Varro came, asked me to come see this kid training in the pitch next to ours. I kept telling him that I was tired, that I needed to go home, that I'd see him another time, but he insisted so much that even though I didn't want to, I gave it a look, and for 25 minutes, I could not take my eyes off of him.
That was show how good he was at young age. God damn, bro,
I was
Zidane.
mesmerized. As I stood there, a board member walked by and said, "You're looking at that under 18, huh? He seems really good." What he didn't realize was that
Damn.
Yazid was still only 16. From that day onwards,
Damn.
Yazid began training with the first team, and only a few months later, he got his debut. In fact, when he got handed 5,000 euros of prize money for his first appearance, as he said it himself, it was 5 or 6 times more money than I had in my account, so I thought, this time,
Damn.
I'm gonna buy myself something nice. I went to the Levi's store and got a new pair of pants. The rest,
Okay,
I sent to
okay.
my mom. Regardless, that was the day I realized that I could go pro.
Damn. Oh, cut.
Even when
Back.
the board came in his way and pretty much banned the coach from playing him, calling Yazid a dancer, claiming that a team who was fighting to stay up could not be putting the club's fate in the hands of some kid, even saying that they weren't spending a fortune on wages just for the more experienced players to stay on the bench. Even then,
Damn.
Yazid didn't budge. Every day from then on, he stayed behind in training, practicing his touch against the wall, and after a season without playing a single minute, they finally recognized his dedication, caved in, and let him play. And as
Damn.
Ibrahimovic would go on to say, when Zidane stepped onto the pitch, the 10 other guys suddenly got better.
Damn. Is he also a team
It
player?
is that
Oof.
simple. It was magic. And that was exactly what happened.
He was gifted with that, bro.
That year, Yazid finally
the
became
chosen one.
Zidane, and not only did Cannes play the greatest league campaign in their history, but he was easily the protagonist. He even went as far as making sure that the only goal he scored, the first of his career, was named the goal of the year. A goal so
First goal of his career, goal of the year? God damn.
impressive for a kid his age that the president of the club even gave him a red Renault Clio as a reward, since after all, at that point, Zidane
Give us
still
a
didn't
car
even
as a
have
reward.
his own
That's great.
car. By the end, though
Give
it
me
had
a
been
new salary.
44 years since Cannes had last managed to even place in the league's top 10, suddenly they were in 4th place and had qualified for the UEFA Cup. And as you might imagine, this attracted a lot of attention, especially from Marseille, who not only was Zidane's childhood club, but had also just made it to the final of the Champions League. There was only one problem.
Okay.
At that point, Zidane was out on mandatory military service, and though they would still allow him to travel back and forth so he could play for his team, it wouldn't be until New Year's before he got discharged, so Marseille decided to wait it out. But unfortunately, by then, with Zidane having to split his time between the army and the club, Cannes' performances dropped massively, being knocked out in the second round of the UEFA Cup, and
They nerfing him, bro. They nerfing him.
all the way down below the relegation line. Suddenly, Zidane didn't look as appealing as before, so they began working out a deal where they would send Alen Boksic on loan to Cannes so they could get Zidane for cheaper. But in the middle of it all, Lyon got upset as they had just lost on the chance to sign Boksic, being outbid precisely by Marseille, only for them to send him on loan immediately after signing him, which at the time was illegal. And just as they decided whether or not to sue them, Boksic just happened to debut precisely as Cannes faced Lyon and ended up getting their keeper sent off and costing them points, which sent them over the edge, leading them to take on the lawsuit, winning it, and getting all those deals cancelled. Meaning that by the end of the year, with Zidane struggling to get back in form, watching his own team get relegated and even picking up an injury, Marseille went back on their word and refused to sign him. Only
After all that, they didn't sign him. God damn, bro.
After tasting glory for the first time, Zidane was back to being a nobody. But that's exactly when a miracle happened.
That will change, bro. That will change soon.
With Cannes struggling financially, Bordeaux's entourage met with them in an attempt to poach two of their players, Jean-François Daniel and Eric Guéry. But once the meeting started, the Cannes representatives began naming all the players they were willing to let go of. And in the words of their manager, Roland Courbis, once I heard the name Zidane, I began massacring the president's toes under the table. 5 minutes later, for a small check of 3 million francs, we left with Zizou in our basket.
Damn.
Obviously, joining newly promoted Bordeaux was not even close to what Zidane expected from that season. I mean, Marseille were months away from winning the Champions League, but first of all, at least he was still at the top tier. And
yeah, I guess you're still playing, but you could like go to Marseille, like a Champions League candidate, but
secondly,
it didn't happen.
Well, waiting for him in that locker room were two guys who would conquer the world alongside him. I'm talking about Christophe Dugarry and Vicente Lizarazu. The moment those three began joining forces, Zidane hit a whole new level. As one of the coaches at the club said,
what a chip!
When he arrived, we saw an introvert, a kid who doubted himself, but with every single one of us around him, his confidence grew every day. We gave him the self-belief he needed.
That's the right environment
to reach his potential.
Pros
and Zidane, he knew this too. As he would one day say, Bordeaux was precisely what I needed in that moment, not just in football terms, but in my life. There, one way or another, I became a man. And by the end of the season, he had done it
a turning
again.
Point.
Bordeaux were somehow fourth in the league and had qualified for the UEFA Cup.
Damn! Back to back with both teams that he had played.
After insisting all year that he was not an attacking midfielder, but actually a facilitator, Zidane was Bordeaux's top scorer with 10 league goals.
Okay.
In the next year, though he would have his first moment of madness punching Desailly in the face midway through a match, then he scored past Oliver Kahn and led Bordeaux to invalidate their fourth place finish, meaning that by August, everyone had forgotten his mistake. Not only was Zidane handed the league's Young Player of the Year award, but
Young Player of the Year also?
He was called up to the French national team for the very first time, and he made sure to make it as memorable as possible.
Oh, cut it again! We're back!
Then, France had not even made it to the previous World Cup, which was especially concerning, given that they were hosting the next one. And since they did not want to get embarrassed in their own turf, Aimé Jacquet had been handed the task of building a new side out of the wreckage of the previous squad. So that day, with Djorkaeff out of the squad, he asked Zidane if he was ready for his debut, and in his usually overly humble style, he told him that Corentin Martins was much better prepared for the match, so Jacquet left him on the bench. There was only a little problem.
Zidane on the bench is crazy.
60 minutes in, they were losing 2-0 to the Czech Republic. So, in a desperate attempt to try to keep France's pride untouched,
Zidane's coming in.
Jacquet took the risk of sending Zidane in for Martins, and the result was simple. With 5 minutes to go,
Zizou?
Zidane took the ball, made it past one, then two, and smacked it in from 30 yards out. As everyone expected the kid to lose his mind celebrating,
What a banger,
he merely
bro.
hurried back to the center of the pitch because his mission wasn't over. That only came
Another
2
one?
minutes later when he leveled the match with a bullet header. As the cameras cut to the bench, you could see it in their faces. We've found our man.
Damn.
Regardless, with Zidane struggling with recurring injuries the next season after a disappointing exit in the second round of the
Another
UEFA
injury?
Cup, Bordeaux
What the hell?
disappointed even further by dropping down to 7th place in the table. But as
Damn.
it seemed they would be out of the European competitions, they were handed a lifeline as the UEFA took over the Intertoto Cup and offered the winner a place in the UEFA Cup. In fact, it was right around that moment that Newcastle were supposedly offered the chance to sign Zidane for only £1.2 million.
Newcastle? He could go to the Premier League.
But as we all know, they did not take it, and quickly, that proved to be a gigantic mistake. In the first match of the Intertoto, Zidane scored a stunner only 6 minutes in, then 8 minutes after that, he got an incredible assist, and in the second half, not only did he start the counter-attack that led to their fourth goal, but scored the fifth through some real Zidane magic, and from there on out, he kept going. 3 free kicks scored over the next 3 matches, but once they were in the final, Zidane added a little bit of his usual flair, getting a 3-match ban for hitting another player.
And bro, okay,
with an elbow.
Zidane so aggressive in him, bro. Hitting another player again?
Thankfully, that didn't stop them from winning the whole thing, and ironically, it was right around that time that Cantona was also serving his ban for Kung Fu kicking a fan.
Damn. Nah, that's crazy.
Zidane made sure to take advantage of his absence to completely cement his position as the new star of the French national team. Not just assisting the opener in their decisive qualifier against Agi's Romania, but then scoring a stunner to secure their place at the Euros. But hey, if you think that was a beautiful goal, just hear me out.
Probably does
Once
more.
he had served his ban, the next round was against Real Betis, and not only did he score the winning goal, but the goal itself, well, it was a 40-yard volley taken straight from a goal kick. If there was a Puskás award back then, he'd probably have won it. And still, it was nothing next to what happened in that quarter-final match. So, look, that year, AC Milan somehow ended up in the UEFA Cup, which was especially impressive because they had been to the final of the
back then they were like the prime, right?
Champions League in every single one of the previous 3 seasons, or if you prefer, they had been in 5 out of the previous 7 finals. They were basically undefeatable. You could argue they were the scariest teams.
Roberto Donadoni.
Since Di Stefano's Real
George Weah.
Madrid, and to make things worse for Bordeaux, they lost the first leg 2-0. As one newspaper wrote, Bordeaux and the UEFA Cup were just a palate cleanser to be dispatched before AC Milan returned to the high table to swill champagne around their gums again. In fact, Di Stefano's Real Madrid 44 years earlier had been the last team to beat them by 3 goals or more in the Champions League. There was no hope that Bordeaux would make a comeback, but then, well, their players noticed that the Italians were far too relaxed during warm-up, so they went in with everything they had, and 40 minutes in, they were in front. Then, with every passing minute, it became more and more obvious that Zidane was the best player on the pitch, and by the hour mark, with a bit of help from the referee, he assisted Dugarry to tie the match. And only 6 minutes later, in Atmeg Desailly, they glided across the pitch and made the impossible possible. 3-0 for Bordeaux, with the entire world watching. And once Zidane assisted Dugarry yet again in the very next match, pretty much putting them in the final, I'm guessing Lady Luck was done with them, since from there on out, everything went wrong. Both Zidane and Dugarry missed the first leg of the final through suspension, and even once they made it back, firstly Zarazu went out injured, and then they conceded through a deflection. The final result was a 5-1 defeat on aggregate, but for
I guess Bayern back then,
regardless, at 25 years of age, that run had finally been enough to convince the country of how great Zidane was, and so, even after getting involved in a car crash that left him seriously bruised from head to toe, struggling to get back to fitness, Aimé Jacquet did not even think twice. The league's new Player of the Year had to be at the Euros, and even through all of that, Zidane still got them within inches of getting to the final.
Damn.
But no matter what, once the market opened, Newcastle decided against signing him because they thought he was overrated, while, let's say, Sir Alex made the same poor judgment call because he didn't want to upset Cantona by signing another Frenchman.
Nah, come on,
Regardless,
Alex.
Juventus, they believed he was the key to stop Milan's dominance, so they decided to risk it. And once he signed the papers, you know we called first Madame Elino. 2 years later, he was the FIFA World Player of the Year and had taken Juventus to 2 Serie A titles
Damn.
and 2 Champions League finals. But I guess he was too slow, huh?
Damn. And the rest is history, man. And the World Cup winner with France, two World Cup finals, but they lost with this one against Italy. Damn. Amazing video from Daily Dose of Football. Damn. If you want to hear, like and subscribe. Comment, share, react next. And see ya.